The story will be told from the perspective of the main female character.
My name is Diana Thorne. I am 36 years old. I was crossing the Blackwood Creek Bridge in my classic convertible. Rain was falling in sheets. The evening should have been straightforward. I only planned to arrive at the main estate. I would hear the reading of the will, then I would depart. My suit was ready. I had controlled my emotions, but when I pressed the brake pedal, there was no response. It went straight to the floor. I felt zero resistance. I heard a small, distinct snap. The line had been severed. Traveling 60 miles per hour, I immediately understood something. My family was not satisfied just excluding me from the inheritance. They intended to kill me. I had to make a decision right then. I decided against going to the emergency room. I would attend the funeral gathering instead. Wait before I describe the look on my mother's face. That look was pure shock when her supposedly dead daughter walked into the house. First, tell me where you are watching this and what time it is now. I want to measure the reach of this story. To understand why my mother tried to murder me, you need to first understand how my family operated. We lived in a large house in Charleston, specifically in the south of Broad area. The mansion smelled like expensive flowers and money inherited over generations. But the family structure was faulty long before I existed. My mother, Alina, never simply raised children. She treated us like investments she could manage. My older sister, Vanessa, was the favored one. She was the showpiece, prepared only for social events and beauty contests. She was compliant and seemed flawless, yet she lacked substance. I was the replacement child, the family disappointment. I asked too many questions. I never cooperated or did exactly what I was told. While my sister was learning how to wave politely during parades, I was busy learning business. I studied how to negotiate permits and manage construction projects. I was 18 when I left that estate. I only carried a single duffel bag. My main goal was an intense need to disprove my family's expectations of me. 15 years later, I had founded a $40 million boutique hotel chain. I built this business from nothing. I never used any of the family's money. Whenever I finished a major business deal or opened a new hotel, my mother never congratulated me. She only asked why I couldn't be like my sister, who had never held a job. People often question why I maintained contact with them. They wonder why I allowed them to treat me like a stranger within my own family. The explanation is complex. It is a standard result of cruelty becoming normal. If affection is scarce while growing up, like water in a dry period, you don't recognize you are suffering. You just believe this is normal life. This is known as the boiling frog syndrome. The hostility did not start with them damaging my car brakes. It started slowly. First, they forgot my birthday. Then, they disregarded my school performance. Finally, they ignored my professional success. You slowly learn to accept bad treatment in small amounts. Eventually, that poisonous environment starts feeling like a safe place. I believed if I achieved enough success, wealth, or utility, they would finally appreciate me. This thought was wrong. Being useful to them actually caused my life to be threatened. The main trigger was my grandfather, Wallace. He was the family head. He was the only person who cared about the business itself, not just the family reputation. His death last week removed the protection that surrounded my mother. Wallace was the only one who regularly reviewed the financial documents. His passing meant the estate would be audited soon. Then the will would be officially read. My mother knew exactly what that financial review would uncover. She knew about the $55 million missing from the charitable funds. Since I was a successful businesswoman, she understood I would immediately spot the financial irregularities. She didn't despise me because I was a failure. She hated me because I possessed the necessary competence to expose her financial fraud. Getting rid of me was not about revenge. It was a required business action to keep her massive secret safe. That is why I was driving on the bridge that evening. And that is exactly why I stood at the roadside with rainwater mixing with the blood on my face. I realized that the time for seeking their approval was completely over. I was not attending the reading to claim an inheritance. I was going to destroy their entire house. I pulled my rental car to the edge of the crushed shell driveway. I left the wreckage of my destroyed convertible for the highway patrol to find on the bridge. Walking toward the front door of the family estate felt slow, like struggling through mud. The humidity in Charleston stuck to my skin. It blended with the sweat and the dried blood on my cheek. I had not changed my clothing. My white blouse had dark, rusty brown stains. I had wrapped my left arm with a scarf as a makeshift bandage. I looked like a crime victim who had just walked away from the scene. This was exactly the impression I wanted to make. The library doors were shut. Inside, the air conditioning would be quietly running. It kept the old books and my mother's performance of grief perfectly controlled. I did not knock. I used my uninjured arm to push the heavy oak doors open. I stepped into the cool, silent, scented air. The scene I saw was a staged picture of false mourning. My mother, Alina, sat in an elaborate velvet chair. She wore expensive, black silk. She was gently dabbing her dry eyes with a delicate lace handkerchief. My sister was next to her. She looked delicate and pretty in an expensive mourning dress. Mr. Jensen, the family lawyer, sat behind Grandfather Wallace's massive desk. He was reading from a thick legal document. A complete silence descended upon the room. It was not a silence of respect. It was the silence of someone's heart stopping. My mother dropped her handkerchief. Her face instantly shifted from artificial sorrow to absolute terror. All the color drained from her skin so fast I thought she might collapse. My sister made a low, choking noise and gripped her chair's armrest tightly. Her knuckles turned white. They were staring at a ghost. They expected a call from the highway patrol. They anticipated a somber report of a fatal accident on the bridge. They certainly did not expect the victim to arrive at the house. "Diana," Mr. Jensen finally said. His voice was unsteady. He stood up abruptly. His eyes grew wide as he noticed the blood on my shirt and the deep cut along my jawline. "My God, what happened to you?" "I experienced some car issues, Mr. Jensen," I replied. My voice was rough but steady. I did not look at him. I kept my gaze fixed on my mother. "Someone deliberately cut the brake lines on the convertible, but I managed to survive." My mother did not speak at all. She was completely unable to. She just stared at me. Her mouth opened and closed repeatedly, like a fish that had been caught. I walked over to the single empty chair across from them and took a seat. The contrast in the room was sharp. Their polished, elegant appearance was set against my injured, bloodied reality. "Please continue," I said, pointing toward the documents in Mr. Jensen's hands. "I believe you were discussing the future control of the estate." Mr. Jensen glanced from me to my mother, then back to the legal document. He was an intelligent man. He had worked for Grandfather Wallace for 4 decades. He saw the bloodstains. He saw the genuine horror in my mother's eyes. He also clearly recalled the private instructions Wallace had given him just 2 weeks earlier. Slowly, he put down the usual will he had been reading. That standard document left the entire estate, the mansion, and the controlling shares of Thorn Ventures to my sister. He reached into his leather briefcase and pulled out a different envelope. It was sealed shut with red wax. "There is an alternative procedure," Mr. Jensen stated, lowering his voice slightly. "Wallace was very precise about this. He wrote a codicil, a special conditional amendment." "What exactly are you doing?" my mother shrieked, finally regaining her voice. She sounded sharp and unstable. "Read the will, Jensen, the one my father signed back in 2018. "I cannot do that," Mr. Jensen countered. His hands trembled slightly as he broke the wax seal. "The condition for activating this amendment was clear. It takes effect instantly if Diana Thorne is harmed or is prevented from attending this meeting through unnatural actions." He looked down at my bloody shirt. "I believe that specific condition has now been fulfilled." My mother lunged forward, but she was too late. The seal was broken. The poison pill had been triggered. Mr. Jensen adjusted his eyeglasses. His hands were shaking just enough to make the heavy paper rustle. He avoided looking at my mother. He looked directly at me as he read the words that would dismantle the Thorne dynasty. "I, Wallace Thorne, being of sound mind and suspecting dishonesty within my own family, hereby declare the following. If my granddaughter, Diana Thorne, is injured, threatened, or blocked from attending this reading, the previous last will and testament is immediately nullified and voided." The air in the room became heavy and difficult to breathe. It felt like the drop in pressure before a severe storm. Effective immediately, Mr. Jensen continued, his voice becoming stronger. The entirety of the Thorne estate, including the Charleston Manor, the investment portfolios valued at $120 million, and the 51% controlling interest in Thorne Ventures, shall bypass the standard line of inheritance. All these assets become the sole property of Diana Thorne. $120 million. The figure hung in the humid air between us for a moment. No one moved. Then my mother exploded. It was not a normal scream. It was a deep, raging, animalistic sound of pure fury. She didn't look at the lawyer. She leaped across the space between our chairs, her manicured fingers aiming for my face. "You are responsible for this," she screamed. Her refined, high society facade completely shattered, replaced by something wild. "You ungrateful, manipulative little monster. You deliberately hurt yourself just to steal what was intended for your sister." I did not move. I did not even blink. I sat there, smelling the coppery scent of my own drying blood, and watched her totally lose control. This was the woman who had demanded perfection from me for 36 years. Now she had reduced herself to a public meltdown in front of the family attorney. "Sit down, Mother," I commanded. My voice was ice cold and flat. "Or I will have the security staff escort you off my property." "My house," the words hit her physically. She froze instantly. Her chest was heaving. She realized that the power structure hadn't just changed, it had completely reversed. She was no longer the untouchable matriarch of South of Broad. She was merely a trespasser. My sister Vanessa was now openly weeping. It was a weak, pitiful sound. "Please, Mother, stop this," she pleaded. "Don't you dare talk to me." My mother immediately turned her rage onto her favorite child. "You let this happen. You were supposed to secure our future." But the shock was not finished. The heavy library doors opened again abruptly. This time, it was not a staff member bringing refreshments. It was 2 uniformed police officers from the Charleston PD. Their rain gear was dripping onto the antique Persian rug. Behind them stood a detective whose face I recognized from local news reports, Detective Shaw. "Pardon the interruption," Detective Shaw stated. His eyes surveyed the room and then rested on the bloody bandage wrapped around my arm. "We got a call from the tow company hauling a vehicle off the bridge. They discovered something concerning. The hydraulic brake lines weren't worn down. They had been precisely cut using wire cutters." My mother stiffened instantly. Her back went rigid with defiance. She believed she was safe here, protected by her mansion walls and the importance of her family name. "This is a private issue for the family," my mother hissed at the detective. "Get out." "Attempted murder is not a private family matter, Mrs. Thorne," Detective Shaw replied. He stepped further into the room. He didn't approach my mother. Instead, he walked toward my weeping sister in the mourning dress. "Vanessa Thorne," the detective said, pulling a pair of handcuffs from his belt. "We found a sales receipt for industrial wire cutters inside your car's glove compartment when it was towed. We need you to come with us." The silence that followed was louder than the rainstorm outside. My sister looked up. Her eyes were wide and vacant, like a broken doll. She avoided looking at the police. She looked directly at our mother, silently pleading for guidance or a way to escape. But my mother refused to look back. She stared straight ahead. Her face was a frozen mask of stone. She was already mentally calculating her options and cutting her losses. In that moment, I realized the horror did not conclude on the bridge. It was just starting now. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was small, metal, and final. My sister did not struggle. She simply collapsed, her posture giving way under an invisible weight I hadn't noticed before. The officers started reciting her Miranda rights, but she was not listening. Her eyes found mine. For the first time in 33 years, the facade of the perfect socialite disappeared. Behind it, there was nothing but pure terror. "I had no other option," she whispered. Her voice was thin and broken. "He has Chloe." I froze immediately. Chloe was my 7-year-old niece. The family maintained the story that she was attending an expensive equestrian camp in the hill country. "Who has her?" I demanded, moving closer, despite the officer raising a hand to stop me. "Uncle Patrick," she choked out the name. "Uncle Patrick, she is not at camp. She's being held at Tranquility Peaks." Tranquility Peaks. The name brought a chill to my bones. It was not a camp. It was a high-end juvenile mental health facility located on the North Shore. It was a place where wealthy families concealed troublesome children to prevent scandals. And it was owned by a private investment firm controlled by my uncle, the family's shadowy figure. The realization hit me hard. The crime was not simply motivated by greed. It was forced. My mother and uncle hadn't just corrupted my sister. They had weaponized her motherhood. They had kidnapped her child to force her to commit murder. I truly looked at my sister then, and the anger that had been driving me since the bridge dissolved into something deeper and more tragic. I had always resented her. I hated that she was the favored one who received all the affection, the gowns, and the approval. But watching her weep for a daughter she could not protect, I saw the truth. Being the golden child was never a benefit for her. It was a process of slow destruction. I had been the black sheep, neglected but free enough to develop inner strength. She was never given that opportunity. Our mother had systematically emptied her soul and replaced it with blind obedience until she was no longer a person, just an extension of a leaner. My sister was not the primary villain. She was the first victim. "I never wanted you to die," my sister sobbed as the officers escorted her away. "They promised if I didn't stop you, Chloe would never return home." "Where exactly is she?" I pressed. "Ward 4, restricted access." As the squad car lights disappeared into the rain, I knew my mother was already planning her next move. She didn't care about the arrest. She only cared that her plan had failed. "My niece is being kept at an unauthorized medical facility," I informed Detective Shaw. "We are not finished yet," he replied. "We need concrete evidence. Tranquility Peaks is heavily protected. I will obtain it. To do that, I needed to stop being the target. I needed to become the hunter." Hours later, a recording device was taped beneath my blouse as I returned to the Thorne estate for dinner. Agent Adams's instruction echoed in my ear. She must admit to the $55 million and the coercion. The trap worked. My mother leaned closer. "The $55 million was not stolen," she explained smoothly. "It was simply reallocated. Your grandfather never understood the true costs of preserving our family's reputation. And the break lines. That was simply a calculated necessity," she said flatly. "You were going to expose everything. I was protecting the family name." That was the full admission. Suddenly, the doors burst open. "Federal agents, do not move." My mother's composure shattered as the handcuffs locked onto her wrists. She glared at me with pure venom. "You wired little traitor. Do you truly believe this makes you powerful?" "I am the person in charge of this family now," I said clearly. She tried one last attack, claiming I was weak, just like my father. But she did not know what I knew. "Grandfather told me about the affair," I replied, referencing Uncle Patrick. "Vanessa is not Edward's child. I am the sole legitimate Thorne heir." My mother collapsed, finally defeated, as they dragged her out into the pouring rain. I looked at the empty seat she had controlled for decades. The rain had ceased. I was the last Thorne left standing at the table.